The first time I thought of this film was when I, by pure chance, encountered Davide Cordova, whose life story this film is based on an airplane, and we had about an hour or so where we talked about his upbringing, his youth, and immediately it was clear to me that that contained everything that a film needed.
Noi abbiamo iniziato a fare delle lunghe chiacchierate che sono durate per dei mesi. Abbiamo scritto la prima stesura.
Well, in the beginning we talked for months, really, for a long time before we actually wrote the first treatment. And fortunately, Claudio Saraceni, the producer, became interested in this very first work. And in this whole process, we always had to select, because we found that there were so many interesting and so many different aspects in Davide Cordova's story, so many things that happened in his life, that we had to focus on certain things. That was a very interesting but also a very difficult process.
Per trovare Davide è stato molto difficile.
So the casting process was very long and very difficult for Davide, for my protagonist. We ended up looking at more than 9,000 boys, because I knew that the success of this film depended in large amounts on the right choice for the main character. Davide actually didn't come to us through a casting. I was in Palermo and I saw him in the school he's studying at. So at first, and I saw his face and I knew he was right, but I had no idea whether he was going to be able to act. So we invited him on the same day. We went to him and invited him for a day of tryouts at my director of castings office. And we found out that there were so many commonalities. Of course, the name, Davide Cordova and Davide Capone, but also their taste in music and a lot of the dimensions of family dynamics that were so similar that we just knew he was going to be right. When you talk about adolescence, the most difficult thing to do, and also the most important, is to get across this atmosphere that we all know, that we all lived through in those times, an atmosphere of doubts, of very strong emotions. The important thing when you do that is to respect your actor, especially if, as in this case, he's a young actor who needs to interpret a very difficult, very extreme role. You want him to go into these emotions, but at the same time, without filters, without any cutbacks. But at the same time, you have to protect him, and so that's where the game begins. Really, you have to do lots of exercises. You have to practice the way in which you can express those emotions, and in this way, Davide and I have constructed this role almost together.
È importante nella comunicazione non verbale tutto quello che sta attorno alla parola e quindi appunto il corpo.
Obviously, in a film, the non-verbal communication, what happens around the actual words being spoken, the bodies, the sets, and of course the costumes are highly important. I designed all the costumes for the main characters myself, and then I drew them out, and then together with the costume designer, we defined them and made them something somewhere between the 80s and today. And we choose that because the 80s were a time in which there was more of a personal impression. There was more the idea of personalizing what you were, much more than today, I think. And so it became more of an expression of the characters themselves. And Davide obviously was somewhere along Boy George, New Romantics, that kind of tradition seemed to fit very well with this character.
Sono quasi delle creature a metà tra la vita e la morte, sono creature in qualche modo che diventano...
Since we are filming people who mostly live by night, they are not very much exposed to the sunlight, and of course they are somewhat pale, but of course it works also metaphorically, because they are suspended in a way between life and death, if you want. There's a certain mythological almost aspect to this. That really was what drove us to this choice of colors. We wanted to create this atmosphere different from real life, a sphere that was clearly distinguished, almost as if in a bubble. And on a technical level, what helped us do that was the use of anamorphic lenses, because they sort of blur the colors already. And in the second phase, we desaturated the color even further, thus creating the contrast between day and night, between these ethereal, almost transluminescent characters and the world around them.